Hello, subscribers. Hello, others. It's David Hoffman, filmmaker, sometimes storyteller. And I'm going to be telling you a story about right now, the coronavirus pandemic. It's changed everything. Is this the first time this has occurred? No. I'm speaking specifically to Americans, but I hope this really has meaning for all of you around the world. In America, we've had this before. And one or two times we've really benefited by something as shocking as what's going on right now. You think about like Pearl Harbor. Boom, everything changed. And we entered a war. We fought for 4.5 years. It was awful. We got together as a country. My mother told me back at that time, there were victory gardens. People treated each other beautifully. She was on the watch in her town to walk around and make sure people had closed their blinds. It was an extraordinary moment for people to get together. 9/11, we certainly changed everything. Our president told us go back shopping the next day. We did, but everything got different. I'm not sure that's as good as the moment I'm about to tell you about. Do you know about the Sputnik Moment? Well, I'm going to show you that in the Sputnik Moment, everything changed. And America reacted, and America changed in incredible ways in less than 2 years. I believe that the coronavirus pandemic is a Sputnik moment. So it's October 4th, 1957. Things that day in America are normal. That's what they used to call it. There was a new middle class. Tens of millions of people had bought homes during that time. We were kind of settling down to the World Series and other things that evening. I think it was Life with Father was on TV. And all of a sudden, the Russians shot a rocket up into the sky and let out what they called a new world.
Sputnik.
The first artificial Earth satellite in the world has now been created.
We are bringing to you the most important story of this century. Mankind's breakthrough into space.
Sputnik. This little silver thing going beep, beep, beep. At first, it was absolutely beautiful. My God, it was the first thing we ever saw in space. It was like a whole new world. But the government, our political leaders, our military leaders, backed up by the press, told us this was scary beyond belief because the Russians had shot this little thing up in an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistics missile, which could carry a nuclear weapon. And we all knew about nuclear weapons because they were blowing them off all the time at that time, the Russians and the Americans, and that could kill us.
The people of the United States have been humiliated, they're disturbed, and they're unhappy. The enemy of ours has outdistanced us.
Russia's getting into space really bothers me.
We are headed downhill to the status of a second-rate world power.
Night after night, politicians and other leaders were telling Americans that Sputnik revealed that we were at great risk.
Not just our pride, but our security is at stake.
If Russia wins dominance of this completely new area, well, I think the consequences are fairly plain. Probable Soviet world domination.
It turned from beautiful to horrifying. We were shocked. I mean, how could the Russians, who we saw as a second-rate power, we were the great scientific power. We believed in science. We had our scientists create the Salk vaccine, Jonas Salk, killed polio. We built millions of miles of highways in the 1950s. We were the leaders in science. How could these guys have beaten us? That wasn't enough. 4 days later, the Russians blew off a 20 megaton hydrogen bomb in the atmosphere.
We proudly announce today that we have successfully detonated a 20 megaton hydrogen bomb. This is of a weight that our current rocket can carry anywhere. Our Sputnik proves to the world that we have the first ICBM, the ultimate weapon.
Senator, do we have any defense against Russia's intercontinental ballistic missile?
No, we have not.
The United States is in a state of confusion and surprise.
Sputnik was the 9/11 of our day. People were shocked that Russia had a technology that could do this, and we didn't.
America said, now wait a minute. Russians can't even build a refrigerator. What are they doing putting a Sputnik, a satellite, into orbit?
The idea that our arch enemy, the evil Soviet Empire, could beat us by getting into space first was just devastating. I mean, people were walking around saying, how can this happen?
We had no defense against it, and we had not put a rocket into space. They beat us. And then 1 month later, 1 month after Sputnik, they sent another rocket up with a dog in it, Laika. A dog that they said was alive and doing well. Holy moly.
Presents a special report on the Russian launching of a second Earth satellite.
Space dog alive well. The red Sputnik. The dog, barking his way around the Earth every 102 minutes, has won Russia new respect.
We saw stuff on the news that said that soldiers were going to go into space and beat us in space. They were going to send up soldiers who were going to kill us. This was really scary.
It is quite possible that an aggressor nation that dominates space will then dominate the world. We just can't let that happen.
Americans across the board called out for leadership. We were frightened. We needed the government, kind of like now. The president was President Eisenhower, and he took control. What he said to America was, instead of looking outside, let's look inside. What have we not done that we could do that could change this situation? How could he calm America down? How could we calm down? Well, we weren't very calm. And what he suggested was science and education.
Scrutinize your school's curriculum and standards. Then decide for yourselves whether they meet the stern demands of the era we are entering.
He created a science board.
I have created a new office called the Office of Special Assistant to the President for Science and Technology.
He said to America, every American, look inside, look at your community, look at your schools, see what you can do to change things for the better.
My scientific advisors place this problem above all other immediate tasks of producing missiles, of developing new techniques in the armed services. We need scientists. In the 10 years ahead, they say we need them by thousands more than we're now presently planning to have.
And one of the most interesting things he asked us to look at our values. We had scientists, but they were building, he said, bigger tail fins for cars. We had chemists, but they were doing kind of smarter laundry detergent. Everything had to change. And we began to see nightly on the news, every community, my community, your community, every community, community leaders looking inside, looking at our education system.
Tonight I want to talk to you particularly about this business of education. When I say education, I mean the problems of education.
What we've got to do is start right in the high schools and toughen up our scientific education so that we can produce those productive, creative people that we need so badly.
At the same time, congressmen and senators sent by the president went to Russia, which let us in, to see what the hell were they doing? What were they doing that we weren't doing?
We learned that Russian kids went to school 6 days a week, that their school year was 213 days long compared to 180 days in America, that every Russian kid, boy and girl, was required to take math and engineering. Russian students had up to 4 hours of homework a night, where the average in America was just 30 minutes.
30 years ago, we had 6 times as many scientists and engineers as the Soviet Union. Now their colleges are turning out twice as many technical people this year as ours are.
This was shocking. We knew we had to change, and we did. As a result of this shock, as a result of this potential horror, America got together, people across the partisan divides, and there were many at that time, just like now, and worked together to beat the Russians and obtain leadership in space and protect ourselves.
If this nation should unfortunately be called upon to defend itself, the real front-line soldier would be the scientist with the test tube and the Geiger counter.
So when school started in 1958, I was a junior in high school, but anyone around will remember this. Everything was different. Everything changed within months.
We used to laugh and say, well, you know, the Russians might have launched Sputnik, but the United States is launching us because of all of these new programs that were in the school, and we all just jumped into it.
It was just like an avalanche, because the response of the United States was to institute this huge science and technology enrichment program.
And it was all heavy-duty, college prep, mathematically based. We're going to train scientists. And the curriculum went that way. The courses became very difficult. It was a revolution. It's going to be tough.
The homework was totally different. We were told we were all going to learn science and engineering and math.
Science had been defined with a small s. In biology, this meant dissecting frogs. In mathematics, learning a series of equations. The same with physics. Now, science was broadening. In every area of study, a focus on science was becoming a critical part of what students had to learn. A course that boys took, shop, had changed. Here's how it was.
It's fun to do things that come out right.
Here's what it became.
Here, the task is to build a transformer and test its application to electromagnetic principles.
A course that girls took, home economics, had changed. Here's how it was.
At home, it would be a minor tragedy.
Here's what it became.
In home economics, the girls plan nutritious and economical menus. Arranging different food budgets, they check price lists in newspaper advertisements.
We separated our students into very special students who went into special classes. We created language laboratories that were not about Latin and Greek. I don't know why we were ever learning that, but were about Russian and Chinese. We had special scholarships. By the time I went to college in 1959, I got a full scholarship. I mean everything. Books, food, car to travel, everything was covered in those scholarships, paid for by the government.
The government put tremendous amount of money into revamping the physics and chemistry. And the new texts came out, the new courses came out, lab manuals, all paid for by the government.
Rote education, that's what we used to call it before 1957.
1, 2, 3, 4. Put your feet on the floor.
Everybody learns the same thing. Repeat after me. Columbus discovered America in 1492. Repeat it after me. Rote education went away. Teachers were now much more creative and asking much more from individual students, and students began to shine. Students who were men, students who were women. The first women scientists really entered college on scholarship, provoked by Sputnik.
It used to be, I could get through chemistry and physics. You know, you could slide through. The coach will let me through. But it wasn't that way anymore. All of a sudden it was like they were looking for something.
What did you get in chemistry? I had a 79. Holy mackerel, you gotta get those grades up. You expect to go to college? What are you gonna major in? I hope to major in science. Science? And with the grades that you've been getting in science? Listen, Ted, is football interfering with your studying? I hope not, Bruce. You must have those grades up, definitely. It's either studies and football or just studies alone.
That's just the beginning of what we did in such a short period of time. Here's one, the internet. The internet came because we were afraid that all the information was stored on a computer in one city. So we began to build computers in other cities. Miniaturization. We couldn't beat the Russians. They had this huge rocket. So we said, let's make things lighter. Let's make things so we don't need as big a rocket. Miniaturization. You know the result of that. It's my watch. It's my phone. It's a billion other things that got created. We created a whole generation of computer scientists. So when President Kennedy in 1961, that's only 4 years later, said, we're going to send a man to the moon in this decade, it did it.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
We did it. We sent a man to the moon. Shortly after that, 1970, I think it was the first Earth Day, partially provoked by the photograph of the Earth from the moon, that classic photograph. We saw ourselves as, oh my God, we're living in a thing. All of this and so much more changed because we were shocked, because a Sputnik moment occurred, which blew us out of the water and made us, rather than fracture into fearful little groups, come together as a nation. And that's what I wanted to share in this story. It was an amazing time to be alive, and I admire the people who came before me, who made things change so fast, who got together and worked together on an individual basis in my town, in your town. I don't know the story if you were not an American, but I do know what happened here. So what's going to happen now? I mean, take climate change, for example. Is it going to take an iceberg floating into Los Angeles harbor to create a Sputnik moment, or is that Sputnik moment already happened? Just like this pandemic, there's also our Earth changing very rapidly right now in ways we can't, for now, seem to control. What about biotech, where they're making the human body, the physical body, mixed with machines, all kinds of machines about to come in the next 3 or 4 years? Is that creating a Sputnik moment, something totally new? People who will be and see and feel differently than we feel right now. So I ask you to consider this moment. I ask you to see it as both horrible and an opportunity. In my town here, people are treating each other differently. They're saying hello. I say hello all the time, but I don't get a hello back all the time. I get a, who are you, weird old man, from some people. Not getting it now. People are watching out for each other. They're offering to shop younger people for older people. Of course, the nurses and doctors and what's happening there, they're heroes for sure. So we are engaging in a moment like the Sputnik moment, which I will never forget, and which I believe has meaning for today if we take it and use it. That's the reason I've made this video. I thank you for watching me talk, and I hope it's been interesting to you, and I hope you benefit from it. I really do. David Hoffman, filmmaker, storyteller, individual American citizen, old man, young man, right?